Annette Densham, welcome to Over the Bonnet.
Thanks, Mark.
You've got 14 awards that you're doing submissions for at the moment. What are they all about? What keeps you busy?
Oh, gosh. My eldest son said to me the other day, he said, Mum, when people complain about they're busy, they haven't met you. And it was like, that's either a good thing or a bad thing. So at the moment, I'm working on Osmopreneur Awards, Urban Design Awards, Raw Awards, Stevie Awards, Telstra Business Awards. So it's quite an eclectic mix of industries and business types and business people that I work for. So that keeps me really busy from about May through to October. And in between that, I'm working on writing articles and stories and building people's profiles. So it's kind of like I'm an octopus. Can't see the other six arms, but they're there.
You say you're very busy. Do you think you're busy?
Yeah, I am. And it's not just, that badge of honor that people wear. And they go, I'm so busy, so busy. I literally sometimes am sitting here going, I have to finish this, but I really have to go to the toilet. I can't go yet because but I'm not that busy where I'm stressed and frazzled. I'm used to working at a frenetic pace because of my background, working in journalism. You've got a story, you've got to get the deadline. Working in corporate comms where things can change at a moment's notice. So I actually thrive in busyness because, I don't know, my brain works really quickly and I am able to do multiple things at once. Even though they say that you can't multitask, I think I'm very good at it.
You talk about deadlines. How good are you with deadlines from your journalism days?
Oh, I'm shit at deadlines. Because I work better under pressure. So much to my clients' absolute horror is that I'm often working right up to the last minute, giving them enough time to be able to, do what they have to do. But I think I work better the closer to the deadline. I always aim to meet them, particularly awards deadlines. You really don't have a lot of room to move with those because they're set. But I still try and push them. I'm a big one for if you don't ask, you don't get. So, if I know that like two days ago, no, beginning of the week, I keep losing track of the days. See, Monday, I sent a client a draft and said, this is due Friday, 5 p.m. I didn't hear from her until yesterday. And then she wasn't happy with what was written. And so I went back and did a few tweaks. And it was like, we're not going to make Friday. So I just messaged the awards people and went, look, this is what's happened. Can I have till Sunday? And she went, yeah, sure. So you've got to ask.
What's the biggest thing that you've asked for in your life?
Biggest thing I've asked for? Oh, that's a good one. I like that question. Oh, look, I mean, this might sound a little corny, but I think the biggest thing I've asked for is permission from myself to share my story, because it's one of the hardest things to do in the world is to share your own story. We're all really, really good at telling other people's. So last year I wrote a book which was all about my story, and I procrastinated on that for years until I went, you know what? It's okay, Annette, you can do it. So I think from a philosophical point of view, that would be it. And I think one of the other biggest things that I've asked for was my last corporate job. For the first time in my life, I actually put a formal complaint in about the behaviour of a senior manager. I grew up in a house where children are to be seen and not heard. I'm a kid of the 70s and 80s. So, the way women were treated then is very different to now. Still got a long way to go, but it's certainly very different. So I'd always just put up with bad behaviour because I just kind of thought that was the way it went. It's just something you had to suck up. So putting in that complaint, I think, was probably the biggest thing that I've ever done. Oh, no, and I've just thought of something else. Am I allowed three things?
Absolutely.
So I've always been a very forthright person. So I say what I think. Um, Granted, with years, I've become a lot more tactful and diplomatic, which is probably good for everybody. But when I worked for, one of the biggest newspaper publishers in Australia, um, they just they just treated their junior staff like crap. It was just a horrible place to work. It was misogynistic, it was sexist, it was nepotistic, and from a kid from Brisbane who really kind of fought for everything she'd ever got. It was like a real eye opener. And because I am forthright and outspoken, I often shot myself in the foot. But just the general way that they treated people. So I made a really big decision to sue this particular organisation and
Wow.
take them to court. It was massive. It was like I was like 24 years old and had no support. Everybody, when they found out, pretty much just dumped me because, you just had to suck things up. This is the way it is, Annette. We've been doing this for decades. You should stop complaining about it and just get on with the work. And I'm like, no. So it's not so much asking permission, but I guess it was asking permission, saying to the community, is this behaviour okay? Is this acceptable way to be treating people, to be paying people? And sadly, the court went, well, yeah, actually, that's okay, because we don't want to upset one of the richest men in the world. But I always really feel proud of that because it was a huge thing to do. And it cost me a lot of friends. It cost me my career. But I told my truth. And it was on public record that this was the way that people were being treated. So, yeah, there you go. Greedy. I'm going to go for 3.
Could you say that it gave you your career, though?
Well, it certainly changed the way that I looked at myself and that life was not about surety and certainty, that even though you can, have a dream, have a goal, do everything that you need to do to reach that goal, that it's not always going to work out. So I guess it made me tougher. I was already pretty tough, but I think it made me a little more street smart. I learned a lot about myself and how I was showing up and interacting with people. Like I said, I'm a lot older now and a lot more diplomatic and tactful than I used to be. Like back then, some of the things that had come out of my mouth, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. Like, did I say that out loud? So I guess, it did really shape my career because when I left the newspaper, I was heartbroken. Like I was devastated. I actually spiraled into depression. And there's like this whole 6 months of my life where I was just in such a dark, horrible, scary place that, I'm amazed that I got out of it. I didn't eat. I was abusing alcohol and drugs. And if I left the house, I would just vomit from the anxiety of it. And at one stage, I've always been a very robust person, broad shoulders, swimmer, athlete. But I shriveled down to like a size 10 and, everything was sticking out because I was just so emaciated. But when I pulled myself out, I went, you know what? The only person I can really count on to get to where I need to go is me. So whatever I do, I need to just be thinking about how does this serve me first and foremost. And I guess it really changed my loyalty and commitment to an employer because that made me realise that I'm really nothing to them except for a means to an end. So I'll go and do my job, do what I have to do and learn what I can, do the best job possible. but always be looking for something that I can do for me. And I guess it took me another, 15, 20 years to get to that point. But when I lost my last job in 2013, which was a redundancy, it was, here you go, Annette. It's time for you to take all those skills, all of those things that you've learned, and go and do it on your terms, which is what I did.
How are you now that you're in charge? Are you a better boss because what you've been through?
Uh, well, the one person who works for me says I'm the best boss she's ever had. And I'm like, really? Me? Because I'm unorganized. I forget to I forget to message her back. We have regular meetings often, which I push because I'm busy. But she says I'm compassionate, I'm empathetic. I push her out of her comfort zone. I give her opportunities to grow and learn her skills. And I encourage her, and I pat her on the back a lot, because I'm really appreciative of her giving her time to me and for doing such an amazing job, because you cannot be delivering the volume of work that we do by yourself. You need a team. So, yeah, I guess it does. I certainly try not to be a micromanager, because that's what I've experienced my whole life. How can you fly and soar if someone's constantly putting a fire blanket on you and going, oh, you didn't do this or you didn't do that? And it's like, yeah, I know, let me get to it, and I will. We've got to give people opportunities to fix their mistakes and to be able to grow through that. And I guess I never experienced that through my working life. So I guess that's what I do for Dee, is I go, okay, here's the job, here's the briefing, here's what I want you to do. And it comes back, and I'll say to her, okay, here's what's great, here's what we can fix up. Off you go and fix it up. And I never correct her work. I always let her come back to me with something. So, yeah, I guess she's 3 years and she's still working with me, so I must be doing something right.
Back in the days when you were working for people and working in newspapers, the glass ceiling, how did you decide to crash through that?
Oh, gosh, with a big bulldozer and lots of noise. I've never been one to sit back and accept this is the way we've always done it. That always seemed like a cop out. Even as a kid, it was like, well, but like, if it's not working or it's not fair or it's not right, why would we keep doing that? So I ask questions. I'm not easily intimidated. Like, I've worked with some really powerful men, really men who've helped make or break prime ministers, with the words that they write in a newspaper. And I just push back. And even though I knew that they hated me for it, and they really were part of not being helpful in me moving through my career, because it's hard to move up through the ranks when the people at the top think that you're a pain in the butt. But I guess it meant that I could walk away and feel proud that I'd not stepped away from my principles and my values, because I think if you're going to break through anything, as long as you break through with those intact, that you've not had to compromise yourself. Like, it would have been really good to do exactly what they said, and to shut up and to put my head down and, kiss some ass and, brown nose. But I watched people do that, and I went, how do you then go and live with yourself in those quiet moments when you know that you're just a big suck? I just never wanted to do that. I always thought that if I became that person, then Annette would be gone forever, and I would just be some, suit wearing, pointy headed person who couldn't think for themselves anymore. So I guess I'm still that way.
Did ego outstrip ability, or what do you think caused the problems for you?
Yeah, it would definitely be ego. The ability was there, but ego of feeling that I was justified and right, that I was coming from a place of authority and self righteousness. Even though I look back and I think I had a really good point, I just went about it the wrong way. While I didn't have to brown nose, the 50-year-old Annette looks back at the 23-year-old Annette and says, you know what, you catch more flies with honey. There was a way that you could have had what you wanted without compromising your values and succumbing to the game, but still play the game. So, yeah, ego definitely got in the way. But, like, you remember being in your 20s, we're unbeatable. We're bulletproof. We definitely think that we know everything. I've got a 20-year-old now that sometimes I look at him and think, was I really that cocky and that arrogant when I was 20? Like, did I really look down on adults, older adults, and think that you're an idiot because of the wisdom that you're now sharing with me? And I had lots of really learned and mature people that I worked with who would say, Annette, settle it down. And it's like, what do they know? So, yeah, ego, what do they know? Now I look back and I go, they knew a lot. So, yeah, ego was definitely a big barrier there.
When you look back at the media now, what do you think of the media, the way it's evolved lately?
Oh, where's a box of tissues? Oh, I lament the loss of quality journalism. I know, and there's a lot of old school journalists who are setting up their own media outlets, and there's some really great ones that do good quality journalism. But if you look at a lot of the mainstream, it's just dreadful. This morning, one of the first things I do every morning is read the news just to see what's out there or what stories my clients could be tapping into. And this morning, I think I read just on news.com.au 5 stories which was just really a regurgitation of someone's TikTok video. Like, that's not news. Or, back in the day, you used to have the op-ed, the editorial opinion piece, which, was the letters to the editor and the editorial piece, a few pages into the paper. Now there's so many journalists who are just writing these fluffy pieces about their opinions. And it's like, how is that news? Like, news is something new, but it's also about both sides of the story. And I really see a lot of the time we only get one side of the story. And it really, and I think, this environment that we live in now really demonstrates how powerful that is in taking everyday people who are just working hard and doing their best, and it pollutes their minds, and they think that it's gospel and they think that it's true. We saw it on a current affair, so it must be true. And it's not. It's just dribble. It doesn't, really have a lot to do with educating and empowering people so that they're kept up to date with what's going on. So, I'm really sad to, see the media it is. And even, like, I can send out multiple media releases a week to hundreds of journalists. And, back when I was a journalist, I would contact everybody through a letter, or pick up the phone, call, smoke signals, carrier pigeons, but would just contact people and say, thanks very much for sending the stuff through. It's not the right time for this story or whatever, and let them know. Now you've got no idea if they've got it, if it went into spam, if they're on holidays, because nobody gets back to you. Even last week, I responded to 4 stories. We wrote 4 stories for different publications and sent them off by the deadline with everything they needed, no link, emailed them, hey, have you used the story? Can you let me know? no answer, and you can email people 4 or 5 times before you even get a response. So I think that we're also seeing this gradual decline in, you're there when I need you, but if I don't need you, I'm just going to pretend that you're not a human being who's worthy of communicating with. So almost that basic courtesy is gone as well, because journalists have got so many opportunities for talent and contacts and stories. It's a little bit like, a kid in a candy store. You just can shove it in your mouth and you don't really have to say thank you, please, or acknowledge what people are doing to help you put out this information into the world.
What do you put down the bias and change and decline in journalism standards over time? What do you put it down to?
I think our desire for news all the time, you've got to fill it with something. So, you've got these online, when we moved into the digital space, there's really no time now to be methodical and careful. Like a couple of years ago, I did a story for, just a local story. It was about this incredible woman who was putting on this high tea for mums on Mother's Day to raise some money for a charitable organisation, sent it to the local paper. They wrote a story. I read it and went, they got the date wrong. Like Mother's Day is the same bloody day every year, and she got the date wrong. And I messaged her and said, you got the date wrong. Like that was a really important part of the story. And she went, oh, I didn't have time to check it. And I went, it's Mother's Day. Like it's not hard to Google when's Mother's Day. It's not hard to go, hey, Google, when's Mother's Day? But she didn't do that. Google just answered me. Thanks, Google. So I think that this change in what's being put out there is driven by that frenzied 24/7 news cycle. A lot of online newspapers in particular are updating their content every 30 minutes, and because newsrooms have been stripped bare, with the redundancies with like the two major media outlets in Australia, Fairfax and News Limited, their newsrooms have been decimated by redundancies. People are advertising less, so you don't have as much money to pay for, quality stories or for the time for these people to write these quality stories. And I imagine that the journalists who are now working for them probably feel a little cheap because, nobody goes to university to do a degree in journalism because they want to write crap stories. They're doing what the advertisers and the powers that be think is what people want. So, and I guess that's another thing is that our desire for information has grown over the years, and we seem to be happy to fill that with whatever. Look at the growth of reality TV shows. Almost that creativity and innovation in entertainment and knowledge has been, decimated by our desire for fast, quick information and entertainment. It's just pummeled at us. I think I read somewhere the other day that we are being hit with 72 terabytes of information a day.
Wow.
That's amazing. No wonder we're all losing it, because it's just boom, 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 and most of it's crap. So I don't think it's going to get any better.
Donald Trump coined the phrase, used the phrase anyway, fake news. And it's something that really is part of our daily doctrine these days. What do you think about how social media is affecting the news landscape?
Oh, yeah. I can't believe I'm agreeing with Donald Trump. There's social media is such a great platform to push out whatever you bloody well want. You've got, wasn't it some AFL player yesterday came out and had a whinge about vaccinations and what his take on it was. And so he's using his Instagram platform to go out to hundreds of thousands of people who think the sun shines out of his bum, and they're going to take that as gospel. It's like, oh, well, I heard this person say that. And it's like, but where's his credentials? Where's his authority in that space? So really, social media really trickles down the essence of what the information is. It dilutes it and it makes it just candy. Actually, the vision that came into my head was fairy floss. It looks like it's got substance, but you stick it on your tongue and it just dissolves. And that's what social media is doing to information, is that anybody can position themselves as an expert. Let's face it, there's lots of experts out there. They've done 6-week course in this, or they've done an online course in that, and all of a sudden they're a nutritionist, or they're an energy healer, or they're a marketing expert. And if there's something I learned a long time ago, so I'm able to get in and do things, and people are like, how did you manage that? And I said, just look like you're meant to be there. If you walk with authority and you talk with authority, then people don't question you. And that's what a lot of people use social media for, is they get there, they look good, they sound good, they've got all of the right, marketing and collateral around them, and woof, off they go. Because people want to feel safe, and they want to feel like people are looking out for them. And if you can do that with enough authority, then they'll believe whatever you roll out.
A case of fake it till you make it.
Yeah, absolutely. But in the worst possible way. Worst possible way. I mean, like, fake it till you make it, like, works, like imposter syndrome. So, it's that horrible, pesky little voice that we have inside of our head that says, you can't do it. Who do you think you are? They're going to find out you're a fake. You're a loser. And even though it's mostly successful people who suffer from imposter syndrome. But if you just go, you know what, I'm just going to ignore that voice and I'm going to keep going. I have the skills. I've gone to university. I've worked in this space for however many years. I can do it. But these people on social media, it's almost like they don't have that self-reflection filter where they're going, you know what, I'm actually really doing more damage. But they also think that they're right. So who am I to say they're not?
Well, they don't also have an editor overseeing what they've written or produced or put out, because you give any kid a camera and he's suddenly an influencer.
Yeah, and we can all be journalists now. You just pick up, you've got a microphone, you're a radio broadcaster, podcast broadcaster. I can go onto Wix this afternoon and open up a template for a magazine style website, and I can start going and getting content from all over and be pushing out the message that I want to impact people with, because we are easily influenced. That's how our brains work. You hear and you see something often enough and you start to believe it.
Because it sounds like the accountability is just going.
Yeah, in newsrooms, they still have editors, they still have copy editors, sub-editors, but they don't have as many as they used to be. Like I said, they're pumping out stuff really quickly. But like I rang a major state newspaper a few weeks ago. A journalist had written a story about a client that was untrue. And I went, I need to speak to this person, because I need to know maybe not where he got his information from, but how do we tell the other side? And I couldn't get through. Their phone number just redirected off to the parent organisation, whereas before you'd be able to ring the news desk and say, hey, can I speak to the chief of staff, or can I speak to the news editor? And going through my online database, I couldn't even find someone to contact to speak to about what this journalist had written. So I had to go directly to him. And needless to say, he wasn't very happy with our conversation and was very aggressive. And it's like, I could have avoided this by talking to your chief of staff and just saying, because the chief of staff doesn't have that emotional investment in the story like the journalist does. So we could have got a clear run, but you can't talk to anybody. It does make it very difficult.
You're obviously passionate about news. You started as an as a reporter. You started off as a reporter. What spurned your passion in news?
I've always been a lover of books, of reading, of stories. You know, when I close my eyes and I think back to being a kid, my happiest memories are sitting somewhere with a book. You know, it was, Enid Blyton, Famous Five, Secret Seven, Nancy Drew, Hardy Boys, all of those great adventure stories. And because as a kid we moved around a lot, so I was always the new kid and I was being picked on. And so I took refuge in the school library so I would, be reading even more books. And then when you hit around 10, people start asking you what you want to do when you grow up. It's almost like a rite of passage. So what do you want to do when you grow up? And it's like, I'm 10. I just want to go home and watch the goodies and Doctor Who. That's my priority for this day. But, I was a pretty serious kid and it was like, I suppose I should start thinking about it. So, I found a book in the library on how to choose your career or how to find a job or something like that. Can't remember what it was called. And, it talked about, write down all your skills and then go and match them. So I wrote down all my skills, I like writing, I like reading. And so I found a section in this book and it had like teacher, librarian, lawyer, journalist. And I went, and read the description of journalist. And one of my favourite shows, don't judge me, was 60 Minutes.
I'm judging
60 Minutes. The stories were just like, I love the stories. And, I'd watch Ray Martin and he was just so commanding. And, Jana Vance was just so powerful and hard hitting with the questions. And, that look that she would aim down at, the person she was interviewing. And it was like, wow, that looks like really cool. Imagine being paid to ask questions. Imagine being paid to ask questions that are difficult and that people don't want to answer, but you're in a position where they have to answer you. So I went, that sounds like a good job to me. I'm going to be a journalist. I'm going to be a journalist because then I get to write, I get to ask questions, I get to read all the time. Perfect. I'm sold. So that's really where it came from, was being bullied and hiding in a library.
What's the biggest story that you wrote?
Well, look, I was starting out, I was not a, front page journalist. I did, IT, business, tech, sport, wrote for the history pages, very exciting. But I guess the biggest story that I wrote was probably later when I was a stringer for the senior newspaper. And I wrote a series of articles about elder abuse and financial abuse. And the story was nominated for an OPSO award, Older People Speak Out award, which was the industry's, award recognising people championing and advocating for older people. So that was probably the biggest one, talking to people who had been abused financially by their family. The woman who was in her 80s, whose daughter had stolen her house out from underneath her. And, shining the light on that this is happening in the 90s. And, and the things that the government was starting to do to protect, the older people in the community from that abuse. So that would be it, because it was just, I'd grown up in a house with my grandparents and with, the the ringing in my ears from my mum is, you respect older people, look at how they've helped build a country. So for me, it was almost really personal as well, because it was like, how can we be treating people like this who've worked their guts out, and then you come along and just steal from them? So that was a pretty big story.
How important are grandparents?
Well, that is a loaded question because, and I'm going to tell you why. Um, I think grandparents are really important. When I was little, my mum was a single parent, so both her parents and my father's parents played a really big role in my life. So because, in the 70s they didn't have single parent payment, they didn't have a pension. So mum would have to work multiple jobs to put food on the table, sometimes successfully, a lot of the times not so successfully. So we were shipped off to the grandparents quite a bit because, nice safe home, lots of food, warm, not having a screaming mother yelling at you because you put your dirty, grotty little fingers on the wall because she's so stressed and out of her mind. And now that I have kids and the kids only have one grandparent left, I really feel that loss for them, because there's a different relationship that you have with your grandparents as you do with your parent, your gestational parent. Um, because I can remember, I love my mother's mother. She was a hard nosed woman. Not everybody liked her, but I thought she was just the bee's knees. And I had so much fun with her. She was so crafty and creative, and she'd dress us up and take us to her CWA meetings. And I went to my first drive in with her. We'd go on picnics. We just had such a beautiful time. And my father's mother and father were very old school and old worldly. Pop still would wear a suit for afternoon tea.
Wow.
So you'd go over there and he'd be sitting there, and we'd be having our scones and our cup of tea, and he'd be in this full suit with a vest and a tie, and it was just so wonderful. And we'd go off to church and sit in the sunroom and all read. And because he was blind, it's the best time, curled up on his lap, listening to his books or listening to him talk about the war, or, just talking about life. So, or sitting under the house with him while he made his stout. And,
Oh, those
I
were the
can
days.
still, yeah, and I can still remember the smell of under the house and the meat locker. And oh my God, I feel so old now. It's like my kids are going, meat locker? What's a meat locker? But so grandparents are really important. And the reason I paused is because I lived with my grandparents from when I was 10 to 16. And my grandfather was an abuser, a sexual abuser. So he made my sisters and my life quite horrific for the 6 years that we lived with him. And it was really hard because of course, it was really hard, but like feeling like you couldn't tell anybody. So he got away with a lot until, I just went, nah, I had enough of this. This is wrong, and told my mother. But it really changed my relationship with my nan, of course, because, we moved, they left, and really didn't have a lot to do with them. So I always feel really cheated, because as a little kid, I just thought my grandfather was just incredible. He was so talented. He, used to work the lathe and make these beautiful pieces of furniture. And I can remember as a 5-year-old sitting in his workshop, and he'd give you a piece of wood and some hammer and nails, and you'd sit there and you'd bang away. And following him around the garden because he was an avid gardener, or hopping in the car while he puffed away on his rollies. And he'd talk about, that I was born in Tassie, and we'd drive around Burnie, and he'd talk about his home. So yeah, that was hard because it was like I feel like I've lost my grandparents and it wasn't my fault.
Have you forgiven him?
Yeah, I have. I'll never forget, but I have forgiven him. I haven't well, yeah, I have forgiven him. Doesn't forgive his behaviour because he did deny it. Um, and I guess what makes it really hard is that when you tell your family and they don't believe you, or because I told a lot of them because it was in my book last year what had happened. They were all like, "Why are you bringing this up now? Surely it's better to just leave it alone." And it's like because I think even when we forgive someone, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't acknowledge the bad behaviour or the heinous. That was heinous behaviour. Is that if we don't talk about these things, then we make it okay for it to keep happening because people don't feel safe to speak up when people disbelieve them and shoot them down. And I'm tough enough to go, I really haven't had much to do with that side of the family my entire life. The last time I saw a couple of my uncles, my mother's brothers, was when she died. She's been gone almost 17 years. So, it's not like we're really close, but I thought, well, maybe you should know that this is the person that you thought was, a good old bloke. He wasn't.
What's your relationship with your uncles now?
Oh, non existent. My mother's younger brother, I keep in contact. Um, not as frequently as my sister does, but every few months he'll ring me or I'll ring him and we'll have a good old natter. But my mother's two older brothers I haven't spoken to for decades. Like I said, since my mum died and they came to her funeral, like they've never reached out. They've, even after mum had died, I had a 3-year-old and a newborn, and I just nursed mum through cancer and watched her die in the hospital and just never heard from them. They never went, "Are you guys okay? Do you need anything? Do you want to talk?" Anything. So I was kind of like, well, this is kind of the way I felt our life had been, when mum was by herself with the two of us, that it was always just us and her against the world. So, it made me tough, resilient, and determined because if someone's not there to pick you up or to support you, then you just have to get in and do it yourself.
How was your relationship with your mother? Obviously, from what you're saying, fairly tight.
Yeah, and particularly like, well, when I was a kid, though, I thought she was the biggest bitch on the planet. She was, she was tough as nails and determined and hardworking and just I always thought that she was like one of the bravest people that I knew. But she was hard, and as a mum, looking back, I can see why when you're struggling to put food on the table and feed your kids and clothe them and pay rent and because your husband's walked out on you and left you with nothing and you don't have any real bankable skills, then I appreciate how stressed, like she must have been out of her mind through most of my childhood. I can remember sitting at the table when I was a kid. I would have been like 5 or 6, and thinking how skinny my mum was. Like she'd always been not round, but tall and athletic. She played state basketball. She was a softballer. She played squash. She was really active and very fit. But I can remember thinking, mummy looks really skinny. Like she was always dieting. She was always dieting. And then as I look back as an adult, it's like she wasn't dieting. She was not eating because there wasn't enough food for her to eat. She would give us food and she always made it seem like it was really special. So we ate a lot of Vegemite on toast. And we ate a lot of tomato soup, and we ate a lot of baked beans and a lot of savoury mince. But she would always, like, she would, we'd eat our tomato soup and our crumpets and Vegemite and watch Mr. Squiggle. And it was a big thing to be able to do that. But yeah, her diets were her not eating. So I, even though she could be really hard and she could be really horrible, because she was a big one who used silence as a way of getting back at you. So, like, if you did something wrong, then you could go for a week and she wouldn't speak to you. Hey, mum, can you please sign my book report? And she'd just grunt and sign. And that would be it. Night, mummy. And it'd be like, So I grew up with a lot of guilt of, like, I've made my mum's life so hard, and when she died, I found all of these poems that I wrote to her begging for her forgiveness. And it was like, oh my God, that's how easy is it for us to damage our children by not working on ourselves? But I guess in the 70s and 80s, we didn't have the personal development movement that we have now. But as I got older and particularly as I got past 25, because that seems to be when your brain fully forms and you start becoming a functional human being, is that I could acknowledge the stress and the trauma of her life, and that whilst she had damaged me psychologically and emotionally, that it wasn't all her fault, that there were so many circumstances that had impacted her life, that made her life hard. And who do you take it out on? The people closest to you. So she'd take it out on my sister and I. But I forgave her, and we were really, really close. From 25 to when she died, I was 34, 35 when mum died. So we'd go to the beach together and go shopping, and I'd go hang out at her house. Our favourite time of the year was State of Origin, where she'd make something, because she loved her sport. She'd make something special, and we'd go over and watch the game with her, or she'd come to our house. And we really, by this time I was with my husband Earl, and we just folded her into the love that we had for each other, into our family. So she always felt like she had someplace safe to go, because she'd never had that in her life. But I think when she died, I think she was glad to go, because she was only 60, but she looked so tired. And I remember looking at her when she died, like when I got to the hospital and she's lying there, dead in her bed, and thinking, wow, I've never seen my mum look so relaxed. And it took death to give her the look her face should have had. The lines were all gone, and she looked so peaceful. And of course she was peaceful. She wasn't breathing, her heart wasn't pounding, but it was like, this is what you should have looked like, because you shouldn't have had to have dealt with all of that trauma in your life. But, I guess, it is what it is. And I'm the person I am because of it. And, I think despite our challenges, she always pushed me to never give up. And I've just never given up, thanks to good old Judy.
How were the conversations that you had with her as you were nursing her as she was dying?
Yeah, they were deep and meaningful. We talked about things that she had avoided, through most of her life. And I learnt a lot about her early life in those, months between her being diagnosed and her dying. And like, she was diagnosed, was New Year's Day in 2005, and she died June 2005. So it was really quick and very aggressive. But the month that she was in hospital and in palliative care, is that at the time I had a baby, my youngest, my eldest was in daycare or with his dad, and I'd go and sit at the hospital with mum every day. Most of the time she slept because of pain, but we talked about my father, who left when I was 3, and why she thought he'd left and what happened and how she met him. And, we talked about Pop and what he had done, and the impact that it had on our family, and talked about her second husband, who was an absolute scoundrel, who, like I learnt that he used to hold her at gunpoint. So she'd go out with her friends and come home, and he'd be so jealous that he would sit there all night with a shotgun pointed at her because he thought she was out, cheating. And here we are asleep in our beds, and this is all happening while we're asleep. So, I learned a lot about her life, which made it easy to forgive her because, she wasn't deliberately being, bitchy or nasty or mean. She was just a stressed out human being doing her best. And I don't think my sister and I ever went hungry. Um, we always had a birthday present and a Christmas present. We never missed out on those. They weren't extravagant or expensive, but she just always did her best to make sure we had what little we could have. So yeah, it was really good. I felt really close to her those last few weeks because she kind of felt, she knew she had an out. She wasn't going to be there for long, so she could share those stories. Although it did leave me with a lot of unanswered questions. There's some things that I'll never know. I've asked her brother, and he was a good few years younger than Mum. So there's a lot of things that happened when she was growing up that he's not aware of because he was, 5 years younger than her. So, by the time she finished high school, he was just starting. So, yeah, it would be nice to know, but it is what it is.
Because of what's happened to you with your grandparents or your grandfather, how's it affected you with your kids?
Oh, we've protected them fiercely, from as soon as they could understand. We talked about, permission around your body, who can touch you, and given them the space that they can say no if they want to whatever that is, obviously politely if necessary, or with a bit more ferocity if appropriate. So our boys, I look at them and I think they're in such a great place because they've not grown up with any trauma. They've got two parents who still love each other. We've been together 26 years. I was home for 10 years of their life. They were read to. We played games. They did sports. We were there for their sport. We've been there for almost every milestone of their life. But I think the trade-off there is they're probably a little less resilient than what my husband and I are, because we both grew up in worlds where you had to be a lot tougher. And I think too that maybe we were a little more overprotective of them, but it's the world that we live in. I think my generation as parents have maybe overcompensated a little bit for our baby boomer parents who, like I was walking to and from school when I was 5 years old, coming home to an empty house with a key. Like my children have never come home as little kids to an empty house and no mum there and no afternoon tea. Like it's always been there, but now they have this expectation of this life that they expect from their parents and from the world because we've protected them so much. But, they've been told under no circumstances is anyone ever to touch you that you don't want to touch you. But they've never been in that situation where it's happened. So I'm grateful for that because I don't think anybody should live through that type of trauma.
You talk about the long-term relationship that you have with your husband. How hard was it to put a relationship together considering that you didn't have the learning and the foundation of seeing a successful relationship?
Pragmatism. I'm going to say that. like when I met Earl, I was 25. I was very aware of what I didn't want. And one of the things that I said to myself in my head was, I never want to be like my mum, because I'd watched her be abused by men her whole life. Like when I look at the book that I wrote about my life is peppered with abuse from men, if not not third party through men that mum had in her life, or by men that I worked with. And I'm not man bashing here, but there is a definite theme in, like, I think a lot of women's lives who grew up, prior to, the 90s, when we started to get a little bit more savvy about what equality meant, is that, we've all, so I know so many women who've been raped and sexually assaulted and abused and, bullied by men. Um, and it's horrific to think of the volumes of those women, and it does make it hard to then take the next step in a relationship. But I knew what I didn't want. So when I met Earl, he was totally opposite to every other man I'd had in my life, as a boss or as a boyfriend or as my mum's boyfriend. I can remember my mum saying, when I introduced him to her, she rang me and she went, because I'd taken him over to meet her and a best friend, and she'd rung and she said, Shirley and I are like, he's so nice, like he's too nice. And I can remember thinking, what's too nice? Like, is too nice a bad thing? Because she made it sound like it was a bad thing, that he was too nice. Obviously, it was too good to be true, because she was so used to being abused. So I went, that's exactly what I want. I want nice. I want responsible. I want loyal. I want kind. I want caring. I want thoughtful. And he was this person who was all of those things. And I think also to being open and honest with him about what I had experienced. Mind you, though, we both had baggage, and we both had to be accepting that sometimes we reacted to things because of past experiences. But I guess we've just puddled our way through, and it's not always been good. It's not always been great, but then there's so many more times where it's just been fantastic. And we still have a great time together. We've still got things in common, and we still laugh together, and we still argue, and we have those times where it's like, you're annoying, but I guess that's a good relationship, is that we always keep coming back together.
Is that the biggest thing for a successful relationship?
Yeah, it is. Here he is now, giving me a cup of tea. How good's that? Talking about you.
You're on radio or something?
Being interviewed.
All right.
You can give me a kiss goodbye.
Right.
Bye-bye, darling.
See ya.
There you go. I got my cup. He's awesome. He looks after me.
Was there a sabotage mechanism with the fact that he was so nice? Did you try and destroy it?
No. Not once. Because I knew what I didn't want. I knew that I did not want to have my mother's life. I knew that I didn't want to be hating men. I knew that I didn't want them to be this enemy for the rest of my life. And the only way that I could, and I think this is all subconscious, because I don't think I was aware enough or woke enough, but I think subconsciously I knew that if I was going to change the pattern of my life from my mother's life, then I needed to do something different. So I never sabotaged our relationship. I was always open and honest and forthright about what I wanted and what I didn't want. And we've always been pretty good at saying, look, you suck that you did this. Or I don't like the way that made me feel, or, and we don't always get it right. because, we're humans, we get lazy and we take each other for granted, and, we get annoyed at little things. But I think when it comes to the big things, is that our values were intertwined enough and aligned that we knew that we were on that path. I can remember us sitting on the couch, and we did come together with a joint love of VB and Star Trek. So it really bonded us together. And I can remember nights where we'd be sitting on the couch and we'd, just been frantically waiting for the next Voyager video, not even DVD video, to come out. And we just like look at each other and go, I'm so glad that I found you, because, we have similar likes, and, we've got similar politics, but there was enough difference about us that it meant that we could, we could grow and learn and bounce off each other. And I think that's really important. You never want someone who's the same as you, because it gets boring. And, even now, Earl is so different to me. And as we get older, I see those differences a lot more, because, I am who I am and he is who he is. And there's enough of that for us to still talk about, interesting and incredible things, which is real, which I find, like, how can you still find stuff to talk about after 26 years? And yeah, we do.
You talk about your book. It's got an interesting title. It's also quite serious. The title, how did you come up with it?
I had a little bit of help there. So my business partner, Lauren Clement, and I were in the car. We were coming back from somewhere, and I'd called it something else. And I'd said, something about, I've eaten so many shit sandwiches. And she went, why don't you call it How to Eat a Shit Sandwich? And I went, yeah, but it's really important people know that this isn't just all doom and gloom, that there's a real message through the book. And the message is that you can have really bad things happen to you, but it's how you deal with them between your ears that makes all the difference to your ongoing future. So my attitude has always been, I've always sought refuge in humour, sometimes not in a healthy way, because, it's really easy to, brush something off with a flip remark or a sarcastic comment. But as I'd thought back through my life and my experiences and how I'd come through them reasonably unscathed, is it because I always found the light in the dark. And so we came up with How to Eat a Shit Sandwich and Keep Smiling, because, let's face it, my book is nowhere near the worst that has ever happened to someone on the planet. And I'm not comparing. I'm not saying, mine's not as bad. It was bad for me. But compared to someone else, there's far worse things that have happened to people. And I've seen those people have incredible lives because they've worked on themselves, that they've not dwelled in the past, that they've used it as a launching pad to become bigger and better and stronger and wiser and smarter. So I really wanted that message to come through my book, that you can read these horrible stories, but in between them is all of these really funny moments and, interesting moments that sheds light on who I am as a person and how I deal with life. And that is by finding the light in the dark, the silver lining. And that's why one of my favourite sayings is, it is what it is. Because something really bad I could get up from here and fall over and break my leg as I go up the stairs, because I do try to carry too much. And, breaking your leg would be pretty bad. It'd make it hard to have showers and go to the toilet. You can't move around. But I could then lie in bed for 6 weeks and write another book because I can't do anything else, or I could sit there and, binge watch Grey's Anatomy from start to end, and that would give me joy. Or, there's so many things that I could do because of that broken leg. Now, that broken leg is bad, but I'd find a way to make it work in my favour, because there's something good that will always come out of bad. But it's like when something good happens to us, something good can happen, and then something bad will come because of that, or something bad will happen and you can find something good out of it. So, yeah, so the book title came from my friend Lauren, who went and we bounced it around, and I went, that's it, that's perfect. It sums me up because, I've got a bit of a potty mouth. The swear words drop like bombs in this house, and I don't even think about it. And then I go, oh, okay, maybe that might have offended somebody. But it also shows my sense of humour, because it's like, yeah, shit sandwich. Who wants to eat a shit sandwich? That sounds absolutely disgusting. You probably wouldn't be able to even get it up to your mouth before the smell got you. And the smiling part is that, there's always something that you can find to smile about in this world, even when it's, feels like everybody hates you, or, it's all going crazy, and, it's just doing your head in. Something will happen, like, your husband walks up to say goodbye to you and brings you a cup of tea, and you go, oh, that's pretty cool. I'm happy about that.
Was it good therapy for you writing your book?
Oh, the best. Oh, absolutely the best. Was, that saying, better out than in? Oh my God. And like, there's so much that didn't go into my book that, because if I just kept writing, it would have been, I don't know, 2 volumes. But it was awesome to be able to share stories that no one had ever heard about my life, even to me, out loud, that I just kept in my head, and then see it on the page and go, wow, you're pretty kick-ass. How did you get through that? Or, wow, I can remember that. I remember learning that in that moment. But I will say I was actually quite sick when I finished the book. You can probably hear now I'm a bit nasally. I have the worst hay fever on the planet. I really should be in a bubble. I'm allergic to everything. And when I finished my book, I just got the worst congestion. It was like all of the poison in my body was trying to come out through my nose. So I really struggled for a while, but I kind of accepted that, because it was like, you cannot let go of that much stuff and not have some physiological reaction to it, which is what I recognize. This is my body getting rid of that. But it was really cathartic, and the feedback has been like mind-blowingly positive, because when you write a book, especially a memoir, it's not like I've written books. I've written business books, how to be a media magnet, business storytelling, around my profession, and that's really just like, it's like writing a recipe book. It's like, here you go, there you go. There's not a lot of emotional attachment to it. But writing your memoir is, this is me. I'm now going to take all my clothes off and stand in front of you to scrutinize me, and see how hairy my armpits are, or the hair on my chin, or the pimple on my, all of those bad bits that we try and hide. And I put it all in a book. And my sister said to me, there's one particular chapter that's a bit racy, and she said, my nephew said, oh, I want to grab a copy of Auntie Nettie's book. And she's gone, well, be careful of this chapter, because you will never look at your auntie the same way again. And she said, I don't know if I can look at you the same way again. She said, I never knew that about you. And I went, well, it's really not the type of story that you tell sitting around dinner one night. Oh, by the way, did you know that I did this? So being able to do that was, oh my God, it was so incredibly confronting, Mark. And when I published it and I had my book launch, which I decided to do on my birthday, I had this incredible writer's remorse. It was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have put that in. Maybe I should have done this, or maybe I should have written it this way. And I was like, oh, well, what's done's done. It's out there now. And Is it going to be shit? Like, are people going to read it and go, that imposter syndrome, saying, you're really not as good a writer as what you think you are, Annette. You just, who do you think you are sharing your story? But, the feedback is, people are saying, I haven't read a book in years and I finished yours in 3 days.
Wow.
I picked it up. I couldn't stop reading. I was still lying there at midnight reading your book. It was so compelling and so well written. And because I wrote it in a very fictional style, so it reads like a fictional book, like a book you'd pick up, from whoever your favourite author is. And I wrote it in the tone of voice of the person I was at the time. So it's the first chapter starts when I'm 3. So the language is very toddler. The tone that I use, like, you can tell that I'm a little kid. And then as I move up through the different ages, 11 and 12 and 15, 16, my language changes and obviously evolves as I mature and I grow. So it was, people love that. It was just, they were saying, I could hear you. I could hear you as I was reading. Your voice was in my head. And I was like, that's awesome. I've gone and grabbed them and I've held them there, not just with my story, but with the way that I told my story.
Was there anything that was off limits in the book?
No. No, there was no, if anything, like when I reread it, I went, I don't always come off as being the best person on the planet. There's lots of drug taking and alcohol and, like sex with complete strangers and, stealing and, one of the chapters, there's a few chapters. I met this guy when I was in Sydney. He was way older than me. He was in his 50s and I was in my early 20s. And he was a cab driver who was a drug dealer who used his cab to sell drugs, marijuana. And he became one of my best friends. And I spent years, he'd come and pick me up from work. I'd finish an 11 o'clock shift at night. He'd take me out to dinner. And he was one of the reasons that I think I ate so well in Sydney when I worked there, because he would just feed me. He wanted company in his cab and I wanted free drugs and food. So, it was a great relationship. But we became such good friends. Like, he was my saviour. When you get to the end of the book, you just realise how important he became to me, because there was just so many times where I just felt so alone and he was always there. I'd go over to his house and he's gone now, the most eccentric oddball I'd ever met in my life. So pedantic and anal. And I think now he'd probably be diagnosed with Asperger's or autism. And he had this fixation for numbers and everything had to be in a certain way. So you'd go over to his house and he lived in this flat on the, where did he live? Like Maroubra, Coogee Way, Randwick in Sydney. And he had this 2-bedroom flat up on the second floor, and he had his bedroom, and the lounge room was just full of shit. And he lived between his bedroom and the second bedroom, which was like his lounge room come drug storage area / drug preparation area. So I would often go over there, in the afternoon before I started work and sit on the couch, and we'd sit and watch recordings of the Footy Show or the X-Files. We both loved the X-Files. And he'd sit there with his old-fashioned scales weighing up $50 bags for the work of that night, where he'd go out and people would ring him up. He'd go drop off the bags and off he'd go to the next one. And I just had the best time with him. He's definitely a strange person, but he was lots of fun. So that's in the book, like, who goes and tells people that your best friend was a drug dealer? and that you used to sometimes help him. Because I look back and I think, oh my God, I was I was I was supplying drugs to people. It didn't even dawn on me at the time as he allowed me. So he was very possessive over his space, that he allowed me to sit there and do the weighing job for him. So he'd have these big blue barrels filled with pounds and pounds, and I'd sit there and I'd go, okay, watching the X-Files, not even thinking that what I was doing was incredibly illegal and would put me in jail. I never got caught. So, you've got chapters where I talk about stuff like that, and it's like, I don't think I come off as the hero. I definitely come off as a very naughty girl. She's not the Messiah, she's a very naughty girl.
How would you describe yourself if you had to, if you'd read the book?
How would I describe the person in the book
Yeah.
or the person I am now?
Both.
Okay, the person in the book is someone who made the best of the worst possible situations. And she is gutsy and determined and very naughty, who doesn't mind pushing the rules to suit her purposes. She's a lot of fun, and she's very loyal and dedicated to her friends and her family. But she certainly likes to have a rip a good time. And I guess I'm not that different. I'm just not as naughty as I used to be, because I have to set a good example. I've got 2 sons. I don't want them to, I don't want them to live the life that I did, because, I started smoking pot when I was 13. Like, I've got a 17-year-old son who has never touched it, and I don't want him to, because I think that if I'd had a different childhood, I would have an incredibly different life in terms of the success of my career. But it is what it is. That was then, this is now. So the Annette now is just as determined. She's tough but fair, loves a good laugh, is fiercely loyal, is certainly not as serious as what she was in her 20s. She's a lot more willing to let things go, because don't sweat the small stuff, because it's all the small stuff. And she's a bit of a larrikin. I'm incredibly sarcastic. I've got a wicked, dirty sense of humour that not everybody sees, because I almost think in this day of social media that you've got to be really careful. And I'm not saying being fake, is that I don't share my whole personality on social media, because I certainly have a very bent way of looking at the world that my friends know, my family know, but not everybody needs to know everything about you. So so I think that Annette in the book and this Annette are really not that dissimilar. We're just a little bit older, a little more wiser, but I certainly haven't lost that sense of fun and the desire to laugh at whatever I can, wherever I can, and see the humour even in the bleakest moments, because that's what gets you through.
Because you talk about using humour for dark situations. When you did the launch, you did it at a comedy show. How important is, well, you're also a comedian in your own right. How hard is it to make people laugh, do you think?
I don't think it's hard. When I did I did a comedy course with the amazing Fiona McGarry. She does these weekend courses where she, helps you pull together, a comedy set. And she says, your job is not to make them laugh. And it's like, I struggled with that for a while. And it was like, when you're deliberately trying to make people laugh, it's hard to do that, because they sense that it's disingenuous, that you're trying to get something out of them. And I think the best way to make people laugh, and I find when people laugh the most at me, is when I'm being myself and when I'm just saying how it is. So, and that's what the funniest comedians in the world do. They make it seem effortless, but they do put their jokes together very cleverly. But when they get on stage, they're just being them. They're sharing with you how they see the world. And quite often they see the world, and how I see the world is how other people do, but they're too scared to say, or they're too scared to acknowledge it because it is a little bit naughty. And so being able to do that so people can see themselves in you and you in them is what makes people laugh. And I don't think it's hard. I make people laugh every day. Sometimes I don't even realize that I've made them laugh. And I've gone, that wasn't funny. I wasn't trying to be funny. But then I go, that's just how I look at the world. You know, I see the funny and it just comes out of my mouth. And, you know, it's great making people laugh.
Do you make your kids laugh?
Not as much as I used to, because, you know, they are, you know, 17 and 20. So I get a lot of the eye rolls. My youngest son, Quinn, is 17 and he's on the spectrum. So he's very black and white. I've had to be very methodical in teaching him what sarcasm is because I'm very sarcastic. So when he was little, he just wouldn't get it. Now he goes, that was sarcastic, wasn't it, Mum? Ha, ha, ha. It's like, yeah, thanks, I feel the love. Yeah, I think they still, they say that I'm scary because I'm very forthright. You're scary, Mum. But yeah, they still laugh at me. But definitely not as much as they did when they were little. They thought I was hilarious when they were little. You know, I did it before. They do something naughty and I'd go, they're not the Messiah, they're very naughty boys. And they would just like crack up, you know, channeling Monty Python, or they'd go around the house going, Mum, Mum, Mum. And I'd go, there's no mum here, my name's Frank. And then they'd laugh and they'd go, no, you're mummy. It's like, no, my name's Frank. I'll go show you my license. I'm definitely Frank. There's no mums here. So I've taught them to use humour. My eldest son, Zaid, he's far smarter, far funnier, far quicker than I ever was at 20. Like, he says things and I'm like going, man, you are so clever. He was telling me last night he works for, you know, a major linen supply, you know, sheets and towels. And he was like doing a bit of a skit around the stupid things that people come in and say. And he's like, excuse me, love, but what are the cotton sheets made of? And he goes, ma'am, you are going to be blown away by this, but they're made of cotton. And just the way he delivered it, it was like, you should be on stage. You are funny and witty and insightful.
Have your kids read your book?
No. Quinny's been a great salesperson. He sold like 6 copies at school. So the next parent-teacher interview might be really interesting as I sit in front of his parents and they're like going, this is Quinn's mum. But Zaid said he doesn't want to read it. Zaid's a really sensitive person and I think that he feels it'd be a little bit too confronting for him.
A little too much mummy.
A little bit too much mummy. So it's there, he can go pick it up. It's sitting on the table upstairs, but I think he's happy just knowing his mum as she is now.
Are there plans for another book?
Well, I have been asked multiple times for a part 2, and because How to Eat a Shit Sandwich is the first 25 years of my life, I went, well, I could do the next 25, but I don't know whether it's as interesting or as detailed as what the first is. But well, I guess I could. I have 2 fictional books that I've been plotting out. One is about a New Zealand journalist who uncovers a plot with the New Zealand government and flees to buttfuck somewhere Western Queensland to escape and falls in love with the local pool lifesaver. And then, so a little bit in the style of Marion Keyes, who's an Irish writer who writes these great stories about middle-aged women, and they're very funny and very insightful. And then the other one's about a house. So it got me thinking I was listening to Stephen Fry talking about his love for Greek mythology, and he was talking about the hearth, how the house used to center around the fire or the kitchen. And now we're all in our separate rooms with our TVs and our devices. So I went, I might write a book called, I don't know, The Four Rooms, about this house where there's 5 people living in it, all living these separate lives, and something happens, like a big disaster happens, and they've got to get to know each other and pull together to get over it. So it's going to be a bit of a science fiction fantasy. So I just need some time to write them. So maybe I do need to break my leg.
After your operation, you can just lie back and relax and write.
Yeah.
You talk about the cab driver that you were very close to, and also your son is on the spectrum. Autism is fairly important to you. Tell us about what you do and how it's affected you, and what you'd like to share as far as the autism message is.
Well, Quinny, who's, as I said, 17 now, is on the spectrum. He wasn't officially diagnosed until he was 10. So his first few years at school were just traumatic for him and for us, because once you get into an institution like the education system, there's not a lot of individual focus and this is the way we've always done it type of view, and they're very conservative. Now, I haven't been to every school in every state in the whole of Australia, so I'm sure there's schools out there who aren't. But in my experience, having been a student at school and putting 2 kids through school, is that I found them not the most welcoming place if you're different. So for Quinny, his first few years at school were quite horrible. He was labelled the naughty boy. By the time he'd reached grade 5, he'd lost, over 250 days of school through suspension.
Wow.
And flexible learning, which is a euphemism for only bring your kid to school for a couple of hours because we can't cope with him the rest of the time. And by the way, don't worry about his education, is that you just have to help him catch up with that. And it's like, I'm not a teacher. I'm the worst teacher on the planet. For Quinn, it really set him, like before he went to school, even though I knew he was different, and having worked in disability services, I guessed that he had autism. I took him to the doctor, my GP, who went, there's nothing wrong with the kid, he's fine. And I'm like going, I don't know. Yeah, he is fine, but there's something about this kid that is going to make his life really challenging. And no one believed me. So we just kept going. And by the time he got to grade 5, we met this amazing support teacher, who recommended that he go to this program for 6 weeks outside of school, which, she put us in touch with a pediatrician. Once you've got a label, there's a whole world of difference to the support that you can get. You've got to have a label to get through the school system. But, for poor Quinn, the damage had already been done. Psychologically, to his self-esteem, his belief in who he was and how he showed up in the world. He was ostracised by his peers' parents. He was not invited to parties. Everybody else was, except for him. You try sitting down and explaining to your 8-year-old son why he's not allowed to go to someone's party because of someone he thinks is his friend, because their parents have got their heads so far up their asses that they didn't stop to ask questions. And every year I'd write a letter to the class to give to the parents and explain, this is my son, this is how he shows up, he's not a naughty kid, he has autism, and this is the way it expresses, and He's not meaning to be loud and violent, but he just gets frustrated and his brain can't cope. But it didn't make any difference. So by the time he got to high school, it was just compounded because we've gone from one teacher who I could work with as a team to 6 teachers, half of them who didn't think there was anything wrong with him based on their learned medical experience, and the other half who would just go above and out of their way. And I learnt that unless the school administration is behind you and willing to work as a team, it's almost impossible to get the support that you need. So Quinn was suspended 3 weeks into his first year in high school, and was suspended another 4 times throughout the year, often because he was being bullied by teachers. So he would, and he's my child. So not only does he have the black and white nature of someone with autism, but he also speaks his mind. And I've encouraged him to do that. So he would tell the teacher that that wasn't fair or that wasn't true. And then they would tell him to sit down and be quiet because his opinion wasn't worth it. And he would arc up. So the teacher wouldn't get punished, but he would. So it's been a real crazy ride for all of us because we've had to learn about him and how his autism shows up. There's a really faint Temple, what's her last name? Temple Grande Temple. That's terrible. I can't remember her name. She's really famous for saying, if you've met one person with autism, you've only met one person with autism. It's a spectrum. On that spectrum, it shows up in so many different ways. So Quinn's high functioning. So he's incredibly intelligent. He can carry a conversation. He can look you in the eye. But then his autism symptoms are that social awkwardness, like he just has no filter and, doesn't understand that you can't say to someone, oh, yeah, you look really fat today. It's like, dude, you can't say that. Why not? Because they are. And I go, yeah, I get that. I understand. He goes, you've always told me to tell the truth. And it's like, how do you explain to someone who sees the world with black and white? So I'm really a strong advocate for not just awareness, but acceptance of people who are different, whether it's autism or gender or sexual preference or culture or race or tall, short, fat, thin, is that we need to just accept people where they're at. If they're not being assholes and they're not trying to make the world a worse place, they're just doing the best that they can, is that we really need to be looking outside of our own heads so that we can see where other people are coming from and realise that, we all add value to this world. And, Quinn's value to this world is incredible. His sense of humour, his observations of human interactions, his work ethic, that this kid who's 17 now has just started to drive, who went to EB Games yesterday and was offered a job. He's defied the odds of being told that he probably wouldn't get a job, these things wouldn't happen for him. But because people have accepted him, those who have, wow, it just allows people to blossom. And I think that we're really squishing people down who are different by not accepting them for who they are and trying to make them fit into what we think that they should be. So I think if you've got people in your life that are a little bit different, embrace them because they just add so much value to your world, so much joy and so many wonderful insights that make you a better person. And I think Quinn has made me a better person because whilst I've always been very accepting and non-judgmental of people, Quinn's experiences through school really highlighted for me just how much more I can show up and be a better person so that I make other people's lives, particularly those, when I say different, I do that with air quotes, those who are different, and that they can shine.
When you talk about the cab driver, though, that you did have a fair bit of interaction with, did it help you understanding your son better because you did have that relationship earlier on in your life?
Yeah, maybe, but I think what probably helped me more was in between finishing with the newspaper and having kids. I worked for 4 years in a supported employment warehouse. So I was a support worker, and I worked with 60 people of varying degrees of disabilities and abilities. So, people with autism, mental health issues, acquired brain injuries, sensory challenges like hearing and sight, quadriplegics, paraplegics, like intellectual disability, Down syndrome. There was all of these different people that I worked with. And it was a real gift because I'd come out of the newspaper damaged and broken and, just angry at everybody. But together enough to go, you know what, if I'm going to get better, I need to give back a little bit. I can't afford to do that and not work. So where's a job where I can do both? And I found this job and did it for 4 years until I had Zaid. That really helped me because I did a postgrad in special education. I did a whole lot of training around train the trainer and productivity work assessments, and I spent 40 hours a week with these 60 amazing, different, sometimes challenging people. And it really helped me understand how society viewed them. Like there's some things that happened to those people that you just you couldn't write about it, and it was unfair and it was unjust, and it quite often came, and it still comes from the government, who are the people who are meant to be protecting them. So when I had Quinn, which is how I recognized really early that he had autism, was I built on those experiences. But like when I was driving around with Phil, I just thought he was a bit of a nutter. I'd never even heard of autism or Asperger's. Like, this is a guy, you'd be sitting at the traffic lights in the cab, and he was so fixated with numbers, and 3344 was his magic numbers. And, we do this countdown to when the speedometer hit a 33 and a 44 in sequence. And we'd go and celebrate. So we'd go have something special for dinner that night. Go to a nice Chinese restaurant instead of, a little cafe or something that we used to just grab toasted sandwiches from, or his pedanticness with how things had to be. So I guess maybe that also fed into why I sought out that job when I left the paper, because I recognised that, there are people who probably still to this day think that he's a weirdo, but he was really just someone trying to find order in his life the best way that he could. And I guess, I had friends like going, it's really weird that you're driving around with a 54-year-old man, and like I'm in my 20s, like, what does he want from you? And I was like, he actually just wants friendship. And that's what he got. I introduced him to some of my friends, and when I couldn't drive around with him, they would drive around with him, and he got acceptance from us. And we encouraged his idiosyncrasies and his eccentricities. It became part of the fabric of our day to celebrate 3344 at some stage, or all ones across the pedometer, or when the clock turned over to a 11:11 or something like that. It was like, yay, woo, it's happened. But yeah, those life experiences have helped with Quinn, because when he was diagnosed, it wasn't such a shock. It wasn't like, oh my God, my poor baby boy, you're afflicted with this horrible curse called autism. It was more, and I say to him, Quinn, autism is your superpower, mate. You can do things that other people can't, and they will never be able to do, because their brain doesn't work the same way as yours. So embrace it as something that's good in your life. It's just a different way of your brain working. And it's like my brain sees things differently to yours. And that doesn't make me better or worse or you better or worse. It just means that that's your power. And it's incredible to work with people who see that, and support those who have that incredible power.
That is a great way to look at it, a superpower, to turn a great negative into a positive. And that seems to be your message in so many things. Now, I want to move on to the Audacious Agency. How did it all come together?
I met this most incredible woman maybe, 7 years ago. I was only really new into business, and, Facebook was really just becoming this place for businesses to connect through these, new groups that were popping up. And I would see her a lot in the Facebook groups that I was in. And, she'd ask questions and I'd answer, or I'd ask a question and she'd answer. And she is a branding, so she is the cat's mother, as my grandma used to say, but her name is Lauren Clement. And she's got this incredible wealth of experience working in advertising agencies, and has become, like a leading expert on neurobranding. So, how the brain sees and feels about brands. So she was running a workshop, and I went, I might go along to this because, PR and branding go hand in hand. And I think that information would be really beneficial for working with my client. So I went along, and she's just so much fun, so intelligent, so knowledgeable, and her workshop was amazing. I learnt so much. And we just started talking, and because one of my specialties is writing awards, she had contacted me and said, I'm thinking about entering this awards, but I think awards are all a bit wanky. And like, she'd worked in advertising where they were just winning awards left, right and centre, and they meant so little that there was just a big rubbish bin full of all of these awards because there was just nowhere to put them. So for her, she was seeing this demonstration of they're just stuff to, whack wherever. They really don't mean much. And so I encouraged her to enter this particular award, which she did, and she won a silver medal for her work in neurobranding. And I remember her contacting me and saying, I think there's something in this. And I went, well, why don't we run an event? Because there's these big Women in Business awards on, they're international, they're not too difficult to enter. I've had some success with them. Let's go and get all these women and men in a room and talk about why, acknowledging your successes and wins is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. And it's good for business, and how awards can help you leverage your message. So we did this event in March 2017 at Yurungapilli. We had 120 people who came to this lunch. It was like, we had the Minister for Small Business, Leanne Anott, came, and we had these incredible women who had entered and won awards on a panel. And I'd said to Lauren, why don't we organise a trip to New York to go and attend this award ceremony and create this program and bring people with us? So I organised it. Lauren collaborated with me. We went, we took 5 women to New York. They all won. We had a smashing time. And we got back and went, well, I think there's something in this. We should really work together. So we worked together like in an ad hoc way up until October 2019, November 2019, where we went to New York for the last time. It seems so long ago. I miss it so much. And I think we had 10 women that came with us that time, and Lauren went, you know what? I think that we should probably we should form a company and we should work together, because profile building and PR and awards are all underpinned by branding, and we can add real value to the people that we work with. So I went, all right. So September, no, well, the end of that year, we registered the Audacious, I can't even say it now, the Audacious Agency as a company. And, so we've been together for a year and a half. I call her my partner in shine because we just work so well together. We're very open and honest with, how we're feeling about what we're doing. And, mind you, she has her specialty, I have mine. And sometimes we can go a week without that crossing over. But we always meet in the middle for awards. And we do a damn good job. And like I said, we're working on, almost a dozen at the moment together. And, we just really add value to each other. It's like awesome.
Why are awards so important?
Look at all mine behind me.
Well, you've got Grand Stevies, you've got the Oz Mumpreneur. Which is the one that's most important to you?
I'm going to go these ones. So this is the Grand Stevie, and the only way you can win a
Hang
Grand
on,
Stevie...
can you bring it over?
Bloody heavy. This is seriously heavy. When I was awarded this on the stage in New York a couple of years ago, I stood up there and the MC handed it to me and I went, I didn't expect it to be so heavy. And I went, that's not a knife. This is a knife. And everyone laughed because it was funny. But yeah, so that's the Grand Stevie. So you can only win one of these if you help other people. So with the women and the men, so we've won a Grand Stevie for the International Business Awards, and we've won 3 for the Women in Business Awards because we've helped dozens of people bring out their achievements and to be able to articulate those in an award submission, which the judges read and go, this person is kicking goals and, and building an incredible business. So your question was, why are awards important? Awards are important in the scheme of profile building. It's not the only important aspect. It's an ingredient in the overall recipe because awards give you third-party credibility. So I can't buy this award. I could hop online and buy one, but it would mean nothing. Like, this means something, and why it sits so proudly behind me, because this is a representation of trust of the people I've worked with, trusting me with their business, because they've got to tell me a lot of stuff. Like, I am inside, I've been inside hundreds of businesses, their profit and loss, their revenue, their gross revenue, their percentage growth, the challenges that they've faced, the hardships that they've had to overcome, the people that they've worked with, the successes that they've had to share that so that I can pour into their submission to get this. So from a third-party credibility point of view, there's nothing more powerful than someone else like the Stevie saying, you are amazing at what you do, and we're going to recognise you with an award. And it's also important because, like, some people go, awards mean nothing to me. That's fine. You're not my audience. I'm not looking to speak to you. But most of us, I'd say all of us, make our decisions subconsciously. We don't even realise that we've come to that decision because of all of these things that our brain has put together. So our limbic brain is very powerful. That's where our emotions sit. And so when you see someone who's won an award, they've got some articles published on some credible news sites, they're blogging frequently, they're doing videos, they're doing webinars, they've written a book, they're being featured on podcasts. They're all the ingredients that go into someone's brain and starts building this relationship with the person that they may potentially do business with. So you're creating this perception of who you are and how you fit in the marketplace. And, we call them dropping breadcrumbs. So the more breadcrumbs you can drop out there and build those relationships with people, even before you know you have a relationship with them, and they come to you and they go, I'm looking for a naturopath, or I'm looking for a mechanic, or I'm looking for whatever. I really like what you do. And you're like, awesome. So why do you like what you do? And they may not be able to articulate that, but their brain is going, well, because you've won awards, you put yourself out there, you're not afraid to, champion your own drum, you're knowledgeable, you're skillful, you're all of those things that build trust and build likability and connection. So yeah, that's why awards are important, because look, this isn't even about me. This is about the people I work with, and this is about the people that I want to work with, because it says that I know what I'm doing. It says that I can be trusted with what I'm doing. And it says that I have the knowledge and skills to do what I do. So you come to me and you go, hey, Annette, I want you to write me an award. And I'll go to people, awesome, how did you find me? And it's like, I've been following you for a long time. And I'm like, I've never spoken to them. Like, I've had people come to me 2-3 years down the track, and they go, I've been following you for a while and I really like what you do. Or some people go, I've been stalking you. And it's like, okay, I'll make sure I keep the windows closed next time.
What award would you like to win? You've won the Stevie, the Grand Stevie. What would you like to win? Is there something or some recognition you'd like?
I'd love to win a Telstra Best in Business award. I think that's the highest business accolade in Australia. And I've been a finalist 4 times in the Australian Small Business Champion Awards. I would love to win one of those in the marketing category. So, I keep entering and I keep learning. I really love an award that gives you feedback. A lot of them don't. The Telstra does, to a point. But most other awards, Stevies do, which is fantastic. But, most of the time you don't even know why you've not won. You just kind of have to work it out for yourself. So I just keep trying. Like, there's no skin off my nose to, not win or to be a finalist and not win, because every time I do one, I learn a little bit more about how I can make it better for myself and for my clients, which is why I like the Stevies, because the judges give feedback and you can go and download that after and you go, okay, so why didn't this one get what we were expecting? And, you read the judges' comments. Some of them you go, are you on crack? Like, you really wrote that. But others you'll go, okay, we really needed to hone in on this point rather than on that point. So, yeah, good on. So I could use this for weight.
It's a big award. When you're actually trying to promote a client, what are the things that you're looking for? What are you trying to do? Is there a formula?
There is a formula. So we've really nutted down our formula, and it's a 12-month strategy that we create. And we look at all of those aspects that I talked about before. What awards align with their business and their audience? What media outlets are their audience on? What podcasts do they listen to? What type of content do they want on their social media page? And then when we create a 12-month plan that we roll out methodically, and it takes time. I think people have forgotten that anything worth having doesn't happen overnight. So, it can take 6 months to 2 years to build a brand that gets noticed. So what we're looking for is, we really like working with people who understand their target audience, because it makes our job a lot easier. However, now that Lauren and I have teamed up, she does that side of the work and helps people really find their true north and, find their reason and their audience and their message, so that I can take that and then go, okay, so I know this is who your audience is. I know this is what you want to achieve. and I know this is your skills and expertise. Here's all the ways that we can push that out there. And we call it being Googleicious. How can we put enough content online? So if you go and search for Annette Densham, there is so much stuff out there that, you know, if you wanted to go past page 5, you're still seeing my name or whoever the client's name, because we have been very methodical in making sure that we're creating enough, you know, high quality, decent content that builds their authority and builds their credibility. So, you know, that subconscious goes, this person's pretty good. You know, I really need to work with this person. So it's a game of patience and a game of persistence and a game of consistency. So you have to do, you can't just do it for a month and go, oh, this isn't working. And there's a lot of people I've worked with who've done that. 6 weeks. Oh, I'm giving you all this money and nothing's happened. And it's like, you know what? A lot's happened. It's just intangible. And, you know, you don't build a relationship with someone overnight. You might go, hey, I really like Mark. He's a good bloke. He asks great questions. You know, he's really insightful and intelligent. I'd love to talk to him some more. But I might need to have a few more conversations with you before I go, you know what, Mark's now my friend, or Mark's someone that I want to give money to because I trust him and I like him. So people are expecting that when they're building their profile, that just because they've been in news.com.au with a big story, that their door's going to be banged down. It may be for 24 hours, but the news cycle's so quick that they're forgotten in a day or 2 days or a week. So you have to go and find some other way to get in front of the people that you want to buy from you, so you can continue to build that trust and that likability. And that's where people go, oh, it's too hard. You know, I can't do it. It's too much work. And it's like, well, you either want to have a business or you want to have a hobby. You know, if you want to have a business, this is part of being in business. You have to make marketing your expertise or pay someone to do it for you, because none of us, like, I'm not in my business to do article writing. I'm in the business of marketing. I'm marketing what I do every day so that people will come to me because I'm good at that thing. You know, a mechanic's not a mechanic. A mechanic, first and foremost, has to be a marketer. How do you get people in the door? You've got to be out there constantly talking about it. And that's uncomfortable. And I get it. I've been there. I've not always been as in the spotlight as I am now. I had to work up to that and get comfortable with that. And starting my own business certainly helped, because I realized very quickly that nobody was going to pay to work with me if nobody knew who I was. And the only way people would know who I am and what I do was if I put myself out there.
It's like that imposter syndrome, though, that you talk about, that are you really good enough?
I remember my first award that I put, I think it's behind me. It's a Bronze Stevie Award that I won in my second year in business as a startup. And I can remember sitting there and writing my submission thinking, I've got no hope. Like, who do I think I am? Like, I didn't have an illustrious journalism career. Like, and there are a lot of people around at the time I started who were doing DIY PR, and they were so much better than me. They had better credentials. They were far more successful. You know, all of those things that I told myself. But I did it anyway, and I remember submitting it thinking, oh, well, that was a big waste of time and money. I'm not going to get anything out of it because, you know, like, I'm going up against international women in business, like women who are far better than me. And then when I was told I'd won a bronze, I was like, what, really? Do you know who I am? Like, do you, like, oh, no, I'm not that good. But yeah, obviously the judges thought I was, and I am. So, but that was hard fought, that moment of overcoming that voice in my head and realizing that, another great saying, if it is to be, it's up to me, is the only person who could market my business at the time, because I didn't have the money to pay someone else, was me. I had to do that. I had to speak up in groups, and I had to, write posts on my Facebook page and articles and blog and do all of those things, even though I was busy, although I wasn't as busy then as I am now.
Googleicious, it's a great word. How did you come up with that one?
I was reading about Beyonce at the time, and I was doing my body is bootylicious, and I went, that's, and then I exchanged. I don't know how I did it, but somehow it went from bootylicious to Googleicious, because I thought, what does everybody want? They want to, why do we pay thousands and thousands of dollars to SEO companies to rank on Google? Because we want people to find us. So there's Google's answering me again. So how do you do that, and what's the whole point? And I just thought, Googleicious. If you want to be Googleicious, you've got to be found, and you've got to do that organically. It's one of those things I'm not quite sure how to explain, Mark, that sometimes things come into my head and it's like I don't even know where they came from. And it's like that was one of the things that I was thinking about Beyonce, and just did some wordplay subconsciously and went, that's gold. I wonder if I can trademark that. I doubt I can trademark it, because Google had probably come down on me like, no, you can't use our word.
Because it seems to be working, because I've read that you've got $4 million of free publicity in mainstream media for your clients.
Yeah, it'd probably be more than that now. One of the ways that you mark the value of publicity is by the advertising value. Some people think that that's a good way. Others would argue that it's not. But, my basic philosophy is that, if I get you page 3 in the Courier Mail, and if you had to pay for that spot to advertise your business, then it might cost you $50,000 for that spot. So you've then got $50,000 worth of free advertising. The beauty of publicity is that when a journalist writes about you, they're not writing about it from a marketing perspective. They're writing about it from a storytelling perspective, so that they're able to put a little bit more heart and a little bit more personality into the story, which really helps with that connection with your audience. So yeah, it works, but it's something that I've had to finesse over the years. I've worked with a lot of people, and I've worked with a lot of people who've walked away and probably think that I've ripped them off because they've not got the results that they expected. So coming up with this strategy that we have now is very methodical, very laser focused, and very, we're constantly telling our clients that, that we're on the right track, that we're doing well, but we have that mix. Like, it's really hard now to get publicity from the media because there's so much competition. So what we've found is that by, pivoting our strategy a little bit to also factor in third-party sites like Koshi's Business Builders, Inside Small Business, Thrive Global, Medium, those type of publications where you can write for them, is also helpful in becoming Googleicious, because they've got high domain authority, and that's Google looking at that particular Koshi's and going, yeah, definitely a lot more credible than you are. So we're going to give your site a little bit more love because you're connected to that person. That we're getting some really good wins because we very specifically create content for specific sites. So instead of just going, okay, we're going to write a media release and we're going to send it out to our list and cross our fingers and hope someone picks it up, Instead, we go, okay, we're going to create a series of articles for Koshi, and they're going to be around these 5 different areas of the things that you do, so that we can really build your credibility through this content, through your connection with this high domain site, with Koshi's credibility, and because people are easily impressed. You go, I've just written an article for Koshi, and people are like, oh my God, that's amazing. That's incredible. And it's like, well, no, it's not really. It's about coming up with the right content, building a relationship with the editor of the publication, and making sure that you give that editor what they want, which will make their audience happy. There's no magic to it. It's like there's really nothing secret. This kind of irks me when I see people going inside secrets to getting publicity, or insiders tips, and it's like it's just like any other relationship. Understand what that person wants, and then give it to them, and then rinse and repeat. It doesn't always work, but mostly if you do that consistently enough, then you're always going to have something that you can share and leverage and brag about to your audience.
We've got so many different types of media these days. We've got television, radio, and newspapers are now going more digitised. Plus, there's the web. Where do you prefer to get your leverage from? Which sort of media?
Look, I would love more TV, but it's really hard to get on TV, especially in Australia. I mean, we've only got, let's face it, we've only got 4 channels, and maybe 4 or 5 programs that we could leverage off. And, let's take The Project. They get thousands and thousands of pictures every week. You've really got to stand out to get their attention. So my favourite is online publications, like the Koshis and the Inside Small Business. I work predominantly with service-based businesses, so that's ideal for them. The podcasts are another great way, because it gives you something to leverage. People can sit and listen to it in the car or while they're doing something else. And awards, look, I cannot go past awards, because not only can you get a pretty trophy, but you also get this enormous amount of content out of the process that helps you improve your business, maybe your systems and your processes, or the way that you're promoting yourself. It always identifies a gap. But who doesn't love a winner? Who doesn't love someone who backs themselves and says, you know what, I may not win, but I'm going to have a go. We live in this country where we support the underdog. And, I often see people that I've worked with saying, hey, I've been nominated for this, and then hundreds of comments from their followers who go, yay, well deserved, that's awesome. And, I'm sure that there's a percentage of them who are going, I wish I had the guts to do that. Like, I'd really like to be able to do that myself. So, it's all of those platforms are a way of not only getting your message out there, but inspiring other people to, come up to where you are, or to at least take the next step. So, yeah, as a writer, I cannot go past platforms where I can actually put, fingers to keyboard and pump out some great content that way.
Well, you're not only inspiring others, you are an inspiration. To find out about the Audacious Agency, obviously you can Google you guys, and you will be Googleicious, and also your book. How can people find out about your book?
Well, I've just put together a very ad hoc website, and it's AnnetteDensham.com. And you can go there and you can read a little bit about me and do a plug here. There's my book. Those pictures are they're all me at different stages of my life, with many different hairdos. Why do we do that to ourselves, women? It's crazy. So if you go to AnnetteDensham.com, scroll down, there's my book, you'll see the cover, and there's a link where you can go and buy a copy, and I'll send that to you. I'm having a soft launch of the book in the next 5 or 6 weeks, where it'll go up on Amazon and Goodreads and Ingram Spark and all of those places where you can go and buy good books and get the e-version delivered to your device. And then I think over Christmas, my project will be to turn it into an audiobook and actually read it. So that'll be an interesting process, because I think I might read it in the voice of the person I was at the time. So I haven't read out loud for a long time, since the kids were little. So I'm going to turn it into an audiobook so people can listen to it on the train.
Something to look forward to. Annette Densham, thanks for joining us. Over the Bonnet.
Thanks, Mark. What a great bonnet it is.